Hello and welcome to Two-Man Power Trip Wrestling. My host, JP John Poz, with me today, very special guest. You may know him from Wrestling with the Devil, very, very popular YouTube show. The brother of Tom Cole. He's Mr. Lee Cole. Lee, welcome in. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, and thank you for inviting me on.
What's going on in your world? What are you up to? I know we were literally last week, we were talking about Hogan and his health and how you were kind of saying what obviously Papa Love Sponge was saying and what a bunch of other people were saying. It's kind of weird that we're not hearing anything from the Hulkster. So, what's going on with you and what's going on with the Hulkster here? I mean, obviously, R.I.P. Hulk, we know he passed, but I mean, what was going on with that news? You kind of knew before I did.
Well, I started reporting on it 2 weeks ago. I got attacked pretty hard on it because a lot of people are wrestling fans and not logical thinkers. I mean, if a man disappears, this is a man that's always been out in front, and he didn't even pick up the phone to say anything. And then there were different things coming out. And when his wife put out the finally said something that he had his vocal cords cut, he had some operation done. I had the same operation done on my neck. I did it, and in my back, I didn't have my vocal cords cut. So it seemed really weird. And in the end, it turned out to be his heart because the coroner, not the coroner, but the report said that he had a heart attack, and they went there, and the heart attack was caused from other cardiac issues. So that's what kind of bothered me. People will say, well, don't they deserve privacy? Yes, they do. But once you go out in the public and you lie to cover things up, you're not entitled to that privacy no more. And that was my philosophy, and that's why I started doing shows on it. But it turned out I just had my best week ever on YouTube. And
Wow.
All the videos I've done, everybody's going back and watching them now, and they're saying to me, wow, you had, Bubba, the same thing, he had it. Hannibal did a really good job on it. But after that, everybody was blind to it.
I was a bit worried. Obviously, like you said, he's always kind of out front and center talking. I mean, the Real American Beer Tour, that was crazy. He was doing, 3 towns a day. It was like the old WWF in the 80s system there going on with how much he was doing. So when he was quiet, I was very, very nervous. And I'm not that I'm a big Bubba the Love Sponge fan or anything like that, but I just never knew him to be a liar or making stuff up. People could say what they will. It might be a different story for a different day with him, but I was like, I don't know if he'd be making this up. That's like a weird thing to kind of make up, to be honest, about another person. So I was kind of following along with you and him.
And whether you like him or not, I think what he did was very sleazy. That was with his friend that he did that.
Yes, very sleazy, yes.
But people don't realize, besides that, he also released the racism calls and stuff. He was responsible.
Yes.
He was responsible. He literally did so many things to destroy Hulk Hogan's life, but it backfired. Hogan came out like a champ, and shut down Gawker, and won a lot of money. And that friendship ended. But to say that they don't know people in the same circle is insane. Of course they do. It doesn't matter whether they talk now. If I had a friend from 20 years ago and we had a certain group of friends, I would probably know some of those people. And that's why I kind of believe Bubba. And then Hannibal jumped on and did some good stuff on it. But the things that bother me are guys like Meltzer. He's right now being looked at like the authority on this. And this is a guy that did not even have enough guts to come out and talk about it one time. And that's when I think the wrestling world kind of gets lost when stuff like that happens with people like Meltzer.
I know Dave for a long time, and I love Dave for certain aspects of the business and certain things that he covers. He does a great job with the Observer. But yeah, he definitely was not the authority on this situation at all. But also, he's being interviewed a lot for the coverage on Hogan when he wasn't necessarily a good person. Yes, historically, but he's never positive about Hogan. Won't admit he's the greatest of all time. Won't admit, and finally said he's the most famous. But and then he said, "Oh, he's probably the biggest moneymaker." Like, he's not being truthful on certain aspects of Hogan either. So I feel like there's other historians, other people out there that definitely could cover Hogan. A lot better and stuff. Yeah.
See, I know. From my brother's lawsuit back in '92, I met Meltzer, never liked him. He did some pretty sleazy things to me and my brother. And that's, don't care for the guy at all. I tell him to his face. And there's never any love between the two of us, to be honest with you.
Gotcha. So, man, it's just crazy. Like you said, like obviously a lot of traffic to your thing. When you're reporting it initially, do you know you're going to be vindicated eventually, or do you just kind of ignore it and kind of just say, hey,
Well,
these people are wrong?
well, I'll give you an example. I reported over a year ago that Vince McMahon is very sick. And then Vince McMahon, this is what gets me. The public relation companies came out for Vince McMahon and said, no, he's great. What he said is a lie. They basically called me a liar. And so everybody jumped on the bandwagon and said, oh, I hate when the public relation companies come out and people believe the public relation companies. That's their job, to make you believe. And so what happened is since I got attacked on that a year back, Vince McMahon has showed up twice, never spoken. And both times it was pictures, never said a word. I find that very weird. Vince McMahon is like Hulk Hogan. These are men that love to talk. These are men that aren't afraid of the camera, that aren't afraid of the mic. Answer me this. Why is Vince McMahon literally has not spoken in public in well over a year now? Doesn't anybody find that strange?
Definitely. He was at the Super Bowl, though. He didn't say anything at the Super Bowl when he was there with his son? No?
No. And maybe he's not able to. Maybe look, the man, he did a lot like Hogan. They went deep into their 60s with the steroids and the working out. They look wonderful. But that all catches up to you eventually. And it usually catches up to the heart.
Yeah, for sure. With Vince, right? Something in the mix. Are you allowed to bring it up? Is something brewing with Vince? Is there going to be something new on Vince coming out? Not as far as his health, just as far as stories on Vince.
Well, right now Vince is involved with 3 lawsuits. One with Janelle Grant, one with the stockholders. They're basically he's being sued because what he did is when he made those settlements with the women, he used money from the company without getting permission from the shareholders. He was supposed to go ask the shareholders whether he could do this, and he didn't. So that's a violation of the law too. So he's being sued. He just lost some money there. Then he has the Ring Boy lawsuit, where 8 Ring Boys have come forward and sued him because he was running the company at the time of when all the Ring Boys were being, I'll say allegedly, even though I know it's true, molested by the company, by Patterson, Terry Garvin, and Mel Phillips. And those boys have come out. They're men now. They're men in their 50s. So there's 8 of them now in the most recent lawsuit. And then Vince McMahon's people have put out there that the federal charges have been dropped, that it's all clear. It's a lie, people. The federal charges have not been dropped. This I know for a fact because one of the people involved recently got a form from the feds. It's called the victims form. And they asked her to fill it out and send it back to them. So I'd like to say, why are the feds still sending out victim forms? Because the lawyer for Vince McMahon said that it was dropped. The reality is the only way you could prove that it's dropped is if the feds come out and say it's dropped, but they have never come out and said the case is dropped. Do I ever think anything's going to come of the federal case? No, I really don't. Only because of the political climate, who's in the White House and Linda McMahon, where she is. I don't see anything ever coming of it. But as of now, that federal case still is not dropped.
Yeah, that's funny. If you go to his Twitter, which obviously I just went to because I wanted to read what he said about Hogan, the second thing that he has on there is, it has been dropped. Like, why would he put that out there, though? That I thought that was a little
because
strange.
people believe what they hear without checking, especially the wrestling community. They're so tied up into this. When they love people always want to. You can't knock what Vince was. He was the greatest promoter that ever lived. Period. No doubt. You could say Crockett and those guys don't come near what Vince did. So the people that love Vince don't want to hear it. The people that love Hulk Hogan don't want to hear things. And I just put up our show today, and I was talking to my partner. It's amazing that somebody with the ego and personality of Vince McMahon came along at the same time as a guy like Hulk Hogan, and they basically saved wrestling. Wrestling was doomed to be just a territorial thing, and they made it into a monster.
Yep.
Those two guys. I will never knock Vince McMahon's ability. You know, I met Vince McMahon. I sat in a meeting with him 3 days in a row. First day I met him, I thought he was awesome. Second day, he was okay. Third day, we hated each other. You know, sit in a room for 3 days with Vince McMahon, you will not like him by the third day.
Right. Was that a part of like a deposition, or what were you doing with Vince?
Well, at that time, my brother just decided to settle his suit. And so Vince invited me and my brother out, because at that time I was dealing with the lawyer side and taking care of everything in that angle. And we both went in and met for 3 days with Vince, his wife, Jerry McDevitt. And by the third day, it got ugly because Vince had somebody steal my code to my answer machine and go in there and get a lot of information out. And when I confronted him on it, Vince looked at me and said, "Oh, you're a smart one." And I remember when he said it, he turned all red. He had bulges in his neck. And we just went at it. I said, "Where do you get the rights to get the code from my machine and go in there?" Back then in '92, it was different. If you had an answering machine, it's nothing like now. And
right,
and they went in there and poached everything out, found out who I was talking to, who some of the ring boys were, and that helped them a lot.
Man, that's crazy. You know,
It's an incredible
get away with
story.
something like that. Yeah.
It's an incredible story. They had me arrested, had my best friend turn me in. Just so much stuff back then. But I don't want to talk too much about that, because a lot of that's going to be coming out pretty soon. And I can't talk about that either, but people look forward to it. It's going to be pretty special. And it's going to be on a major, major network, as big as you can get.
Oh, so
Yes.
there will be something as far as Vince coming out again,
Oh.
not like the Netflix thing, something else.
No, Netflix bent over and kissed his ass. It's not going to happen that way with this. Believe me. The people in this will pretty much shock the daylights out of everybody.
Crazy. He hated the Netflix thing, Vince.
And it didn't even do nothing to him.
Yeah, he ripped it apart. He wanted to end it. He wanted to take it, you know, whatever. He did not like it, apparently.
Yeah, and it wasn't even hard on him. If he thinks that was hard on him, he has no idea.
You can't talk about it though. Whatever it is, it can't.
No, I'm actually signed where I can't talk about it.
Oh, okay.
I can give you the briefs of it.
Yeah.
As soon as it's going to be coming out soon, and as soon as it does come out, you're going to be seeing some stuff dropping and premieres and stuff like that, all sorts of stuff. I'll keep you in touch with that. But right now, I can't, because I'm legally and get in trouble.
What's going on with the Janelle Grant stuff? I haven't heard anything lately, really, from either side.
Janelle Grant's won every round in court. Every time they've gone to court with Janelle Grant, they've lost. You know, every time they tried to get the case thrown out. So Janelle Grant wanted to add this Dr. Corker into it. And Vince McMahon's people said, "No, we don't want them in there. We don't want him in there." And the court refused and said, "Yes, she can bring him into the lawsuit." And Dr. Corker was Vince McMahon's friend. Supposedly, he was a supplier of the steroids. And Janelle saying that's the doctor that was keeping her drugged. And so he has to hand over all his paperwork and everything. So that's a problem for Vince, because if Dr. Corker turns on Vince, it only gets worse, because we're talking now you're going to get into the steroid. What Vince did by not just think about this. Vince, this girl, he settled with her for $3 million to go away, never bother me again. After $1 million, he decided to stop paying her. So she said, "Well, once you stop paying me, that means I could talk about what happened."
Break the NDA, yeah.
So Vince has spent about $50 million to spite her. Instead of giving her the $3 million, that's when people say he's smart. How smart is that? that he has all these lawyers battling this woman who's been beating him in court and tearing him apart. One woman. The only reason I came back into this genre was because of Janelle Grant. I seen that her case came out, so I came back into the genre. I didn't come back in. I joined the genre about a little bit over a year ago. I have 105,000 subscribers now. And no show has grown like that in this genre, and I'm not a wrestler. And Vince has been his own worst. He is literally his own worst enemy.
That's definitely true. I mean, you can look at it, the thing. It's like, who could beat Vince? Like himself, basically.
Vince, Vince always reminds me of he was the kid that went out and got in trouble and came home to mommy, Linda McMahon, and Papa, Jerry McDevitt, and said, please get out of this.
Yeah.
And Jerry McDevitt's a brilliant guy. Yes. I met Jerry McDevitt, never liked him, but he was a brilliant guy. And Linda McMahon, they were all involved in the cover-up of the Ring Boys. And even Linda McMahon's currently being sued in the Ring Boy lawsuit. So is TKO and WWE. It's 4-prong lawsuit.
Right.
And same with Janelle Grant right now has the best chance of all the lawsuits because Vince can't beat her. Because it's true what he did. And now John Laurinaitis has turned on him. John Laurinaitis.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, John Laurinaitis just sat down with Janelle Grant's lawyers and gave a deposition. Does anybody have any idea how powerful that is? John Laurinaitis was Vince McMahon's main guy, his best friend. They hung out, everything. They went with women. They did everything together. And what did Laurinaitis lost his family, his wife, everything for what he did. And Vince McMahon lost his everything. He lost his relationship with especially Stephanie and Triple H. So this is what it gets me. Look, Vince McMahon he stayed away. Remember the first time he left the WWE in 22 it was?
Yep.
And then his daughter takes over and she's the boss. And then Vince McMahon comes back and says to his daughter, oh, sweetie, I'm back. I'm going to take over, get out of my seat.
Yep.
And she walked right out of the building, never to come back. I mean, this guy has literally been his worst, absolutely his worst enemy.
Do you think that John Laurinaitis, Johnny Ace, is a good character witness, though? Because he was just on Vince's side, and then he flipped, like the flip-flopping nature of it. Do you think that's good or bad, though, for him?
Well, it depends. Is he telling the truth? Look, if he comes forward, okay, and confirms things that, okay, for example, when Vince did that awful thing she said on her, and he was there, and he was there also. If he confirms that, if he confirms the deadbolt locks put on the office doors, there's a lot of things here that can be confirmed. And then you got, what's his name? I'll think of it as a name. The guy that left the WWE, the great wrestler.
Brock Lesnar?
Brock Lesnar. I'm sorry. So if you got Brock Lesnar that leaves the company, never to come back, Brock Lesnar's never coming back. I don't know if anybody's seen a picture of Brock Lesnar recently. He looks like a 48-year-old out of shape man. None of that pumped up look anymore. Now he looks like a butcher from a farm. That's what he looks like. And that's what he is.
Yeah, he's a butcher. Yeah, that's what he does. Yeah.
And he's all into his daughter. His daughter's going to probably go to the Olympics for shot putting. So, that's his thing. That's what he's into right now. But he's not coming back. He last thing he wants to do is have any, it's a fact that Vince McMahon offered Janelle Grant to him as a payment. And once you do that, that's part of a RICO Act to offer somebody out, especially if they have to go across state lines, which Lesnar had to do. So luckily,
but didn't she say she never Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't she say she's never met him before, never even seen him, and
Yeah.
so they never met? Yeah.
But they have the text to prove the conversation happened. See, that's the thing. What really gets me about a smart man like Vince. Why did he send all those texts?
Hmm. Yeah.
Why do people do stuff like? And Vince never said, "I didn't send those texts," because they came from his phone.
Right.
It's just fascinating stuff when you think about it. And Vince McMahon just has done this all to himself. He's tarnished his legacy real bad. He's tarnished his legacy real bad, much more than Hulk Hogan.
With Janelle, was she married? Because I remember that was a part of it
No.
too. Or was she
Well,
engaged?
no, she was married, but they weren't together no more. She lived with her mother and father, and that's how Vince met her. They lived in the same building. And then,
Because I heard that, or I guess Vince had put this out there, that she was engaged and she was cheating on the guy she was engaged with, and they would meet because they lived in the same neighborhood. That's not true.
No. Vince has said so many lies that have been proven lies. That's why each time that he files a motion, it gets dismissed. You realize he's filed about maybe 10 motions to have this dismissed, and every time he's been refused. That because he's lying. There's a lot of lying going on. And the Laurinaitis thing is really big. It's huge because Laurinaitis is very, very dangerous to him. Of course, they're going to say, well, look, this guy is a flip-flopper. But if he gets up there and if he can name people, places, and things and has his own evidence, his own phone, and stuff like that,
What do you think, though, with Vince, right, when he's throwing stuff out there? Does that further put him in the hole? Does that get him in trouble in anything? Or is that just a defense mechanism? Is it just like part of his lawyer's not? Like, what is the purpose of doing that if they could prove that he's making it up? You know what I mean? Like, what's the end game there? Just to waste time?
It's called public relations. Public relations. It's never Vince that comes out and does it. It's his lawyer or public relations that does it. It's not Vince personally saying these things. Public relations or the lawyer will say, well, this is what's really going on. They're doing their job. They're trying to protect Vince McMahon. And just like Janelle Grant, she has a really good law team. She has really good people around her. So Vince is always used to having the best and winning. But what's hurt Vince more than anything? He lost Jerry McDevitt, who retired.
Yeah, retired. Yeah.
Very smart. Right after Vince paid off those women, Jerry said, I think it's time to get out of here. Jerry seen what was coming. Because he was part of paying those women off. McDevitt was. And he wanted no part of it. I guess he knew it was going to lead to all hell. And then when Vince paid off those women using company funds, Jerry had to know that was going to come back and haunt them. And it did.
It's crazy what's going on. Obviously, with Vince, there's one thing after another. And you mentioned the Ring Boy thing. So you don't think the Ring Boys can? Well, obviously, you know that kind of better than anybody. But you don't think that they're any? Do you think they could win or no?
Yeah. Everything's up to one judge always. One judge takes in everything, and they have to decide. The problem with the Ring Boy lawsuit is that it's in the state of Maryland that they have no statutes of limitations. So what the WWE and those companies were doing, and TKO and Vince and Linda, they're trying to get it put into another state where there is no statutes of limitation. So right now, the key to the Ring Boy suit is it has to stay in the state of Maryland because there's no statutes of limitation there. And they know that. That's the bad. But today there was another filing that just came out by the Ring Boys lawyers. You got to remember, the Ring Boys law team is one of the best law teams you've ever seen. I mean, this is a phenomenal law team. See, Vince right now has always been one to have the best lawyers. That's why he won all of them. He no longer has the best lawyers. And the people that are covering the Ring Boy, they specialize in sexual abuse victims. That's their specialties, that law firm. So they know what to do. They know what to file and how to file. And so it's up to one. At one time, I would never say this, but Linda McMahon's in the White House. She's there in the White House. There's a lot of power around her. And nobody knows. One person pick up a phone call. Somebody has something on the judge. You just never know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying out of all those lawsuits, the strongest lawsuit to me is the Janelle Grant lawsuit. I think that the Ring Boy lawsuit is very strong, but I'm just saying which one is the strongest is Janelle Grant's.
Ring Boy scandal, obviously, Pat Patterson, Terry Garvin, Mel Phillips were all involved, in that. And obviously your brother was involved in that as well. Was that paid out? Did you guys get a settlement, or did that settlement not go through?
Well, my brother kind of messed up.
Okay.
Because he agreed to go back to work for back pay. And a year later, they got him into some contractual stuff, and they forced him out of the company. I was totally against that settlement, but that's a long story in itself. But when my brother made that decision, I supported him because he's my brother. And there were a lot of things done, but you got to remember, we were just a couple of young guys. We had no idea. We were too stupid to know that we were going up against Vince McMahon. We were too stupid to understand we didn't know who Jerry McDevitt was. We were a couple lamb amongst lions, let's put it that way. My brother was definitely a lamb. He was just an innocent, good kid. He wanted his job back. He wanted to be around the wrestling world. He wanted to be a ring announcer. And when he came back, they promised him that position, that they would let him train for that, but they never gave him that opportunity. Their biggest fear at that time is they just started signing a bunch of toy contracts. And they knew if the Ring Boy, if Tom came out in public back then, what would have happened is those toy companies would have been forced to drop their contracts with the WWF. That's who they were at that time, the WWF. I met Vince McMahon for the first time at Radio City and in Manhattan, the Phil Donahue show. And they wanted me to sit in the audience when my brother was out there. I refused because I had friends on the stage that were my friends, like Barry O, and they felt like I betrayed them. But I had nothing to do with the settlement. I didn't want the settlement. But it's not my lawsuit. It's my brother's lawsuit.
Right.
I can't tell my brother, no, his name's on the contract.
So you were against him settling, though, but he was dead set because he wanted to go back to work for the company. That's kind of the gist of it?
Well, what happened is they did some really corrupt things. I don't want to get into that now. I told this story. They did some really corrupt things to get to that point. And when they got to that, like I said, my brother was in the room alone with Vince McMahon and Jerry McDevitt. His lawyer should have never left him in the room alone, but he did. And it turned out his lawyer was already talking to Jerry McDevitt, which he never informed us, which is another violation. And when you meet Vince McMahon, you have to understand, everybody thinks that, I'll give you an example. When I met Vince McMahon for the first time, he came with Miss Elizabeth and he came with his wife. But everybody there wasn't cheering Miss Elizabeth or his wife. They were all cheering Vince McMahon because his aura is big.
Yeah.
Very big aura. And he's the one that everybody looks at. Like when a guy walks in the room, when that guy walks in the room, that's the one everybody's drawn to. And it's like I said, I after that, I dealt with him for 3 more days. And then after that, never again.
So your brother did go back, end up working there. I didn't realize it was for that long. So he ended up working there for another year when he accepted the settlement and back pay?
He went back for another year. He had to, and they knew they could not get rid of him for 1 year. So they set him up when they got rid of him. And they basically got him out of the company, but my brother went back. I'll give you an example. When my brother left there, he went to get, and this was unheard of, my brother went to get his unemployment insurance in Connecticut. And Linda McMahon showed up at the hearing, and the judge was so pissed that she showed up, trying to get Tom, to stop Tom from getting, he was like, why are you here? Why would you, a woman as wealthy as you, care about one of your employees? You send your lawyers to do that. And the judge literally said that. Why don't your lawyer do? You know, then Linda McMahon never, and Linda McMahon admitted that the only time she ever showed up for a hearing on unemployment insurance was with Tom. Nobody else ever. How many people do you think collected unemployment insurance in their company?
Right. Why though? What was the reason? Like, why did she need to be there?
It was like they really wanted to stick it to Tom at that point, because Tom did so much damage to their company. Mel Phillips was gone because of him. He had to resign. He was basically fired. Terry Garvin was fired, and Pat Patterson came back, but only because my brother signed a release form to let him come back. Because part of the agreement, the original agreement was that Pat Patterson couldn't come back. Terry Garvin of Vince McMahon, and they agreed to it. So if they're so innocent, why are they agreeing to release Pat Patterson? The most, probably had a better brain on him than Vince McMahon. He was the guy. He was Vince McMahon's right hand. And Vince knew that he could not run that company without Pat. And they basically got Tom in a room alone and said, please, we'd like to have Pat back here. And Tom signed the papers and let him come back. Otherwise, we never know Pat Patterson again.
Wow, interesting. Never knew that part of it. I knew he came back.
Only because Tom let him. Only because Tom let him. No other reason. It was part of the agreement. These three men will never come back. It was part of the agreement. And the only way that is if Tom signed a waiver. And Vince begged him, literally begged him, said, please let this guy come back. You know, and he got his way. But, you know, Tom was just a young guy at that point. He was 20 years old. And he was just trying to be nice to Vince. But it was Linda McMahon that really controlled everything. Linda was the one that, people don't realize this, Linda controlled everything upstairs in the offices. Vince was downstairs. But up in that building, Linda was in charge of everything.
When you're like looking at it, right? So he settles and he's allowed to come back, but he can't sue them again. Like, so he
he can sue them. Oh, matter of fact, he did sue them again.
Okay.
Yeah, because after that happened, he sued them again. He came back at him with another lawsuit. That's another story. But no, there was so much stuff that happened here. At that time, I had a warrant out for my arrest. And I had a probation warrant. It was a felony probation warrant. And they didn't realize that I was working with my probation officer, and I paid that off. But back then, it wasn't in the computer system. It's not like now where everything's in the computer right away. This is 1992. So they flew my friend Steve down to Connecticut, and I had the evidence of this all. And Steve told him, "Oh, Lee has a warrant." So they asked Steve to set me up and have me arrested. Steve did that, and then I got taken back to New York City. And then when I got released, I called up Vince McMahon and Jerry McDevitt, and I told them, I said, "You guys have effed up." I said, "I'm really going to come at you guys really hard now." And, but that's when my brother Eddie came to me and said, "Oh, it was Steve that set you up." When I called Steve, he's crying on the phone, and he signed a confession that he gave me the tickets that he used to go down to the Vince McMahon's place. All this stuff's coming out. All this stuff that you're hearing now, like, this is stuff that's never really been out with evidence and proof, tickets, everything. This company, it shows you this company would go to any means to destroy anybody. Not the new company, not now. Now the wrestlers are treated good now. They don't have to go to do a bunch of house shows. They don't wrestle 300 days a week. They got good insurance. They're not independent contractors no more. And that's what Vince used to do to destroy them. They were all independent contractors except a few big stars. But in general, 95% of wrestlers were independent contractors, which meant they had no insurance. He could fire them anytime they want, and they make really no money. And we heard Jesse Ventura talk about this. Jesse Ventura tried to get a union started, and guess who ratted out Jesse Ventura to Vince McMahon? Hulk Hogan. He said, right. Jesse's in the locker room trying to get a union started. So then right after that, Jesse was gone.
I love Jesse, but the funny thing about that is, so he goes to Hollywood and he gets obviously gets a part of that union. So, like, did he really care about the wrestlers, or was it more about himself? You know what I mean? Like, it was about Jesse more than.
Yeah. This is the man that sued a dead soldier's family, Chris Kyle, and he sued the wife and won, actually, but he didn't care. He sued the wife just to prove that he was right.
But the union thing, I always feel like that thing gets blown out of proportion because he did join a union when he became an actor, but did he really, like the wrestlers union, he completely forgot about it as soon as he became an actor. And the infamous Terry Funk story where Funk is like, well, I'm just going to become an actor. I'll get, the money that way. So like a lot of the guys smarten up to stuff like that.
Yeah. But unfortunately, the majority of wrestlers they weren't Funk. They weren't Ventura.
Piper,
and
yep.
They couldn't do that. And look, wrestling destroyed Piper. I mean, you remember when Piper started crying and said he didn't want to tell him what they did to him. He was talking about Pat Patterson. So, they knew what Pat Patterson was doing to these guys. It was harassment, sexual harassment in the workplace continuously by Pat Patterson. How many guys have to come forward to say this happened? Why did, if it wasn't true about Pat Patterson, why did the WWF release him as part of my agreement with my brother? Why did they release him? Because they knew it was true. You had so many wicked people back then. It's really, really eerie.
Well, did they say the reason was because of Terry Garvin and Terry Garvin worked under him, or what was the?
No, all three men were all three men in the complaint were accused of sexual acts described in the complaints with workers, with individuals. My brother talked about his. He couldn't even go in a room with Rick. What's his name? He would stare at his crotch. Pat Patterson would stare at my brother's crotch and lick his lips and grab his ass and grab his crotch while he was walking. But he did that to all the wrestlers. All the wrestlers. Not just, I know, look at that. You heard Tony Atlas describing when he's in the shower and Pat used to come around. He used to start acting crazy. So Pat wanted to come in there and try to grab his pecker. Or you would hear Brickhouse Brown came out and talked about what happened with him. Jim Powers talked about how he was forced out of the company. Paul Roma forced out of the company. But if they slept with Pat Patterson, they would have become stars in the company. Why was Lombardi around the company all those years? Was it because of his talent? And it's like a lot of those guys stayed around. The guys that shouldn't have even stayed around, and they pushed a lot of good guys out that wouldn't cave into Pat Patterson. Nobody likes to hear this stuff, but I would say go to Romo's show, and go to Powers, Power and Glory. They have a show. They talking about what happened to them all the time. This was two wrestlers that came in there really hot at that time. And Pat Patterson ended it. But that wasn't the only guy he did it to. He did it to many guys. And then you had Pat, listen to Roddy Piper when he was crying about what happened to him. And then a couple weeks later, he goes, no, it was nothing. So somebody had to reach out to Piper and say, why did you say that? But it was many wrestlers. Hey, you know who used to sit next to Patterson all the time? The Rock, when he was a kid. He was one of the boys. And he was always around the wrestling ring, The Rock. They all know about all these guys from back in those days. They all know, and the ones that speak out, they're just called a bunch of names. A lot of them don't speak out because they all still dream that they still can come back in some capacity with the WWF, WWE. But that's over because Vince McMahon's gone.
One last run, or I guess you want to say one last shot or whatever.
What's that?
Like one last run with WWE is what you're saying. Like that's what they think they're going to get.
Right. Well, or they can get like the WWE has shows that they do, like hunting down heirlooms and stuff like that. And they bring the wrestlers on.
Yep.
Or they can make the Hall of Fame. Borderline guys that can't make the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Johnny Rodz is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But yet you have guys that were much higher level than Johnny Rodz that aren't in the Hall of Fame.
Oh God, yeah. Yep.
When you think about that, why would Johnny Rodz be in the Hall of Fame over certain guys? The only reason that what's his name? The Ultimate Warrior got put in the Hall of Fame was because of Triple H. Triple H he went to Vince, and Vince said was against it, but then Vince goes, well, you deal with it. And it was Triple H that got him in the Hall of Fame. Now, if Triple H wasn't there, Vince McMahon would have never brought him into the Hall of Fame.
Crazy. Bruno too. Bruno might not get in if Triple H didn't set that up. Yeah, which is nuts.
I was very good friends with Bruno for a long time. One of the best men that I've ever known.
Yeah, such a nice guy. Yep.
When the lawsuit came out in 1992, he did a deposition for my brother, my brother's lawyer, along with superstar Billy Graham did a deposition also. And they talked, and in those depositions, they talked about all the stuff that went on, all the twisted, demented, perverted stuff that went on there. Billy Graham, about a couple of years later, came out and said, oh, I was lying. But that was after they took him back in another capacity. See, these guys, they all want to come back. Bruno, I was shocked when Bruno came back. But that, once again, that was Triple H. That was not Vince that got him to come back. But I was shocked. I was shocked because he really stood by what he meant, and he was on the night my brother's name came out on the Larry King show. He was debating Bruno. It was Bruno debating Vince. And then Vince said to him, what about this boy? And that's when Vince admitted Tom Cole's name. And that was a big thing back then. That's when Tom's name came out into the public. But now Bruno was a hell of a guy. I'm telling you, one of the nicest humans you could ever meet. You could talk to him on the phone for 2-3 hours like he's just a regular guy.
Yeah. Yep.
Because he was a legend. I mean, people don't realize how big he was in the 70s.
Oh my God, it's absolute, God of wrestling for sure. I remember I did an interview with him and he goes, John, we only have an hour. I'm like, oh my God, I thought we had like 5 minutes. It's like an hour. I was like, holy cow. I was like, okay, perfect. So that's to give me that time, like kind of time is just unbelievable. What a nice guy. Yeah. He was.
And it was real.
Great.
He was your typical steel. He represented the city of Pittsburgh. He looked like this, like he was one of those guys. He looked like that hard act guy. And he was just a nice guy. Don't get me wrong. He didn't like certain wrestlers, and he would make it clear.
Of course,
like Ric Flair. He went off on Ric Flair. He's went off some guys that he did not like, but he's entitled to that. People don't realize he was champion twice both times for very long periods. I don't even think was anybody ever champion as long as he was.
No, longest ever for sure. He actually held it for almost 8 years, and then basically another 5. So yeah, it's just crazy his title run. And
Well, Roman
Reigns recently, they kept bringing it up that Bruno, like like he reach, like he'd have to hold the title for 4 more years if he was going to reach Bruno. Yeah, that's how crazy it was.
Yeah, that's like Cal Ripken beating Lou Gehrig. Nobody ever thought it was going to be beaten. Now it can't be beaten. See, now it's like things are so different now, the way they do things. Too many guys want to be. If you're going to make John Cena a champion, come on, really? You making John Cena a champion? And why? Why is John Cena champion?
No idea. That was, I mean, obviously he can only do a certain amount of dates. He even said, I think it was like 36 dates or something like that. And basically in 7 or 8 months. So, I mean, that's not a lot of dates here. I mean, that's nothing. Yeah, that was a misstep. I have no idea why they did that.
And he's half the wrestler that he used to be.
Of course.
And
yeah.
Why is the WWE having these silly matches now of these old timers? Like the Goldberg thing was a total disaster, and it's like, why? The guy could barely get down to the ring. He jumped out of the ring the first time he went down and hurt his knee. It makes you, is it Triple H's way of saying, you know what, guys, you deserve that one little last run? Maybe.
Could be.
But, So let me ask you a question, John. What do you think about the job? What do you think about the job that Triple H has done since he's taken over?
Honestly, you can't knock it because you could say, oh, this was a bad creative misstep, like the Cena WrestleMania 41 thing with Travis Scott was awful. But, outside of that, you can't really knock it because they're making billions and he's doing a great job. And like, you can't really say anything negative just because if you look at dollars and cents and money, which is so much driven of what people say positive or negative is money driven, they're making more money than ever. So you kind of can't knock them. Sure, I can pick on some creative decisions, but they're making more money than ever. So I can't knock them at all.
When Vince McMahon left, they said, oh, no, WWE's done. When Vince McMahon left, it was at $67 a share. It's at $174 now. So literally it went up over $100 a share since Vince McMahon left. So when Vince McMahon signed that contract with TKO, they knew that they were going to have him out in a week. It was already set up. And they knew that Triple H knew that he was out. His daughter knew he was out. And that's one time where Vince McMahon was always used to being the smartest guy in the room. But when you go in the room with Emmanuel, Shapiro, those guys are much smarter than Vince McMahon. And just look at it. They got Dana White. I mean, these are brilliant guys. In 1 week, he was out of the company. In 1 week.
Crazy thing is, too, the creative, I know this is like a little nitpicky, whatever, but the creative under Vince every week was so boring, and it was kind of stale for like 20 years. Triple H, I know people can pick on it. They don't like this show. They don't like that. Raw, SmackDown, whatever. But for the most part, it's pretty more entertaining, at least where I can actually get through a whole show and watch it. Vince, it's like fast forwarding the whole time, or at least a little bit more creative too. Like kind of gave a jolt to the business, to be honest.
Yeah, but you know what it is? But you see that kind of faltering in the last couple of months. And
the Cena stuff is a huge misstep. Yeah, they need to get back in the
biggest misstep is the waste of Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley came out like this unbeatable force. And everybody loved her. And now they have her losing to wrestlers that, if she's this unbeatable force, why would she be even losing to Liv Morgan or any of those people?
Right.
It just doesn't, and what are you going to do with Charlotte Flair, and what are you going to do with Becky Lynch? These are legends. So what are you going to do with them? What's their purpose? It's like sometimes you can have too many, like I think with the women right now, they have too many great women wrestlers to really know what to do. I mean, women wrestling,
which one to push. It's not like you're pushing Hogan by himself. It's like who to push.
Back then it was much easier to push, but Rhea, people I love Rhea, people love, they love the little girl that Liv. What they've done with Liv is incredible. She doesn't look the part or nothing.
I just saw, by the way, Rhea Ripley for the SummerSlam festivities. She was the first person to sell out all of her tickets for autograph signings. I was kind of pretty impressed. Some pretty big names on that list.
That's what I don't understand. She is huge. She has more people on Instagram than any of the women wrestlers by far, including Liv Morgan. She's funny. She's very strong. She's pretty. I mean, she has all the things going for her, but yet they rather have, give that the Samoan one. What's her name? The big girl?
Nia Jax.
Yeah. You're going to push Nia Jax over Rhea Ripley? That's crazy. Nia Jax just doesn't have the look. I'm sorry. She plays that. She's she could be more of the bad, the real bad person, let's say. But I can't see the play they give her. It doesn't make sense. This is where I get a little bit confused with the women wrestlers. They have so many good, talented wrestlers. What are you going to do with them? I'm sorry, Stratton should not be winning matches over Flair. I just don't think it's a good thing to do. Why?
Yes. It's interesting. Now Charlotte's in a tag team. It's interesting what they're kind of doing there.
Yeah. But I think they're so good that they just don't know. Because if you remember the matches, people knock Ronda Rousey, but those matches Ronda Rousey had with Lynch and Flair were phenomenal matches. You notice you don't see that no more? That seemed like the last of the great matches.
Could be true.
And what do you think about Ronda Rousey in the WWE?
I didn't really like her run. I felt like she wasn't, I don't know. I feel like she wasn't into it for whatever reason. Like, I feel like she didn't want to be there some of the time. That's what it felt like to me.
The first year of the first run, she was into it.
And then after that, she was just not into it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the feeling. She always wanted kids. I mean, she just had her second kid.
Right,
so she just always wanted to have kids. And you can respect that, and
definitely.
I don't think she ever should have come back for the second run. I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, that almost was like, I guess I'll do it, but I'm not really interested.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything else you want to ask me, feel free to ask.
No, let's head towards the wind down. Let's head towards the finish. I want to hear, where everybody can find your YouTube channel, obviously Wrestling with the Devil. What they can find on there, and just kind of promote that, because I think that's obviously a thriving, great YouTube channel.
Well, Wrestling with the Devil was based on, I got the name from Vince McMahon, because I since 1992 I have been hated by Vince McMahon quite a bit, and Wrestling with the Devil is like the bad side of sports. I mean, wrestling has a lot of good about it, but it's also a very, very corrupt industry. Not so much anymore. They've cleaned it up. But there was a 30, 40, 50-year period there. It was like a carnival. They were all a bunch of carnies.
Yep.
And Vince McMahon was the ringmaster of the carnies. And that's how I always looked at wrestling. And I like to touch other things too. Just the bad side of, expose some of these people for what they are, like Vince McMahon. A lot of geniuses are madmen, in history. And Vince McMahon is a genius that is also a madman. That's how I look at him. And I just try the darkest side of, people love Dark Side of the Ring. But I don't even think Dark Side of the Ring goes that far, because they're kind of obligated to the WWE and they don't. In the beginning, I feel like they went much further the first year, but now not so much.
So where could everybody find it, though? It's just type in Wrestling with the Devil on YouTube.
Yeah,
and
just go to YouTube, put Wrestling with the Devil. You can go to TikTok, put Wrestling with the Devil. This young lady is helping me with my TikTok, and she's helped me a lot because my old brain ain't meant for TikTok.
Yeah.
But once you start TikTok, it's kind of addicting.
Yes, I think that's the point of TikTok. Yeah, very addicting. Yes.
Yeah, and it's much easier to put up videos that go on a run in TikTok than it is YouTube.
Yeah.
I put one up on Vince on Lesnar's daughter, Mia, when she won that title. And it's at 500,000 views right now.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, and it's just weird that you just got to do it a different way when you put stuff up there. I'll put a video up and I'll think nothing of it, and I'll wake up the following morning and I'll notice like there's 100,000 overnight. You know, that's a nice feeling.
Wow, nice.
But then Hulk Hogan's hot right now. The one thing people say to me, they say, "How come you're always talking about Hulk Hogan?" But when I did Vince McMahon, why you when you have a business, and what I have is a business, you go with what sells. People want to hear about Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
People want to hear about Vince McMahon. You know, there's certain people that, you know, Roddy Piper, people love to hear about Roddy Piper. You know, there's just certain people that the wrestling world is mesmerized with, you know, and some they're not. If I talk about Gunther, I'm not going to get anybody to look at anything. If I put a video up about Gunther, nothing personal. I think Gunther's a great talent, but they're not too much into that.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And that's how I think the public lets you know. That's why I'm confused about Rhea Ripley, because to me, the public lets you know who they love and who they don't.
Yep.
And it's obvious that Rhea Ripley, the public loves Rhea Ripley, but somebody at the WWE doesn't love Rhea Ripley. That's the feeling I get.
Got to go all the way. Yep.
But so anyway, if you can go to Wrestling with the Devil at YouTube and put it in, and I have maybe right now a couple hundred videos up. If you want to learn about my brother and myself, go back to the very beginning. That tells you about the whole lawsuit, the scandal, everything that happened. And you'll see a lot of videos in there that talks about a lot of the corruptions in wrestling and a lot of things that happened. A lot of things that people don't talk about because they don't know about it. Not many of these people could say they spent 3 days with Vince McMahon, even the people that worked at the company. And Vince McMahon isn't going to spend no time with anybody if he doesn't think they're important to be with. That's just the way it is with Vince. One of the great characters, you know, he's the Goebbels. I call them like Goebbels. They use evil people that never go on. They're just evil, but there's something about them that everybody's, you know, they're attracted to.
Yes, Joseph Goebbels. Yeah, nice reference there. Yeah,
yeah, he was like a minister of propaganda.
Yep.
You know, and it's like that would, and that's also, you can talk about Jerry McDevitt. Jerry McDevitt was absolutely brilliant. Jerry McDevitt was the reason that Vince never went to prison, because he was such a good lawyer. You know, imagine he met Jerry McDevitt back in the 80s. He was so impressed with him that he asked Jerry McDevitt to give up his practice and become my house lawyer. So can you imagine how much Vince was paying him to be a house lawyer?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Jerry's the best. He's the man.
Yeah, he is, without a doubt.
All right. Lee, thank you so much for all the time today. Really appreciate it. Everybody check out Wrestling with the Devil. Thank you, Lee.
I appreciate it, too. I had a good time. Just, yeah, I like talking wrestling with people that aren't necessarily wrestling fans. You like wrestling, I could tell. But,
oh, yeah.
But, you know, it's like some people are just crazy wrestling fans. I like to talk about several. If I talk to some people about, if I say something negative about Vince McMahon, or they'll start a fight with me. You know, they don't want to hear nothing negative about anybody.
You got to take all sides. Come on, you got to hear everything. Yeah, for sure.
You take care of yourself. Thank you for having me on.